HDMI 2.1. What exactly is it? HDMI 2.1 is the newest standard which can support resolutions up to 8K or 10K under compression. Alongside this, higher refresh rates are unlocked such as 120Hz. However, 4K 120 and 8K 60 are the main focus for console gaming and home cinema applications, respectively. There's also some rather clever supporting features in the form of dynamic HDR, eARC, variable refresh rate, quick media switching, quick frame transport, auto low latency mode, and display stream compression. Let's cover this buffet of features first. What's the story with dynamic HDR? Well, as we already know, HDR offers improved contrast and more realistic colours. Content creators use metadata embedded in the footage to configure your TV's average and maximum brightness levels for the movie you're about to watch. Dynamic HDR delivers even better contrast and colour. Instead of setting an average and maximum brightness for the whole movie, colorists can now apply this on a scene-by-scene or even frame-by-frame basis, making better use of the full dynamic spectrum available. We've already been enjoying eARC, or Enhanced Audio Return Channel, on HDMI 2.0 products. Only a little confusing then that manufacturers are making a big deal about it for HDMI 2.1. Unlike ARC, eARC allows for uncompressed 5.1, 7.1, Dolby Atmos and DTS:X audio to be passed from your TV to your AVR or soundbar, giving you the best audio experience when using your TV as a source. Variable refresh rate is a technology some of you PC gamers may have already seen. AMD's FreeSync and Nvidia's G-Sync have been used for many years to remove screen tearing and stutter. VRR is HDMI's version, and it's able to dynamically sync frame rate from your source to your display, meaning as the load on your graphics card changes, the display can throttle or accelerate frame rate accordingly to remain in sync, helping to produce a smooth gaming experience. Quick media switching is a little more niche, but no less useful. It removes the black screen commonly seen when switching sources that use different refresh rates. For example, 60 to 24 to 30 Hz all switch instantly with no blacking out. Quick frame transport reduces the latency between user input to seeing the action being performed on screen. Vital for any gamer. It does this by transporting each frame at a higher rate to decrease display latency, the amount of time between a frame being ready for transport in the GPU and that frame being completely displayed, which could be the difference between winning or losing, improving overall responsiveness. Lastly, Auto Low Latency mode provides the best response times by automatically disabling unnecessary video processing. Prior to this, it was a manual adjustment on most displays. Now it simply does this for you and returns back to your preferred high-quality movie settings when you're done. Confusingly, HDMI.org allows manufacturers to implement only some of these features or all of them, and still label their devices with HDMI 2.1. So make sure to check that the features important to you are supported. Now, the cause for the most confusion and frustration comes from HDMI 2.1's new bandwidth potential. Many of us will have seen 48 gigabits per second quoted somewhere when reading about the new format. However, this is a theoretical maximum and not necessarily what you will end up needing. Let's face it, if there's little to no content, source devices or displays that will utilize this amount of data, what's the point? So how much bandwidth would you actually need to enjoy movies in 8K or gain a competitive edge when playing the latest games? Let's run 4K at 120 frames per second with a 12-bit color depth and 420 chroma subsampling, the UHD Blu-ray standard, and a very respectable gaming setup. For this, you would require 24 gigabits per second, or just half the theoretical maximum of HDMI 2.1. Okay, what about 8K at 24 frames for that cinematic feel, with the same color depth and chroma subsampling? A pretty awesome movie setup, over and above how most movies are mastered. Well, this is also 24 gigabits. Hang on, so why would you need more than this? Largely, this would be dependent on whether you need to reduce or remove chroma subsampling, also known as color compression. Reducing color compression massively increases required data rates for what many people might view as marginal gains. So what are we saying? That you need more than 24 gigabits per second to hit that juicy 444 color space? Wrong. Using display stream compression, it's possible to achieve 4K 120 10-bit 444 using just 18 gigabits per second, and 8K 60 in the same color space using just 21 gigabits. So what's the catch? DSC needs to be supported by every step of the chain, your source, AVR and display to do its job, and currently there's not many devices that support this yet. In the short term, you might want more than 24 gigabits per second, because 48 is more than 24 and more is better. But let's just take a look at the most popular current HDMI 2.1 sources. What would you need to get the best out of the PS5? Running 4K at 120 frames with 12-bit color depth and 422 costs 32 gigabits, the maximum possible for the PS5. Okay, same question, but on the Xbox Series X. Running 4K 120 with 10-bit color depth and 444 color resolution costs 40 gigabits. 40 gigabits per second also offers support for 8K at 24 Hz with 10-bit color depth and 444 color resolution. So if you want to get the absolute maximum out of either of the latest gen consoles, make sure your AV device has enough bandwidth. But also bear in mind, you may be waiting for content to be created that takes advantage of it, and TVs that can actually display it correctly. And if you're not into either of them, and you just watch movies, then you'll have plenty of spare bandwidth with the majority of 2.1 devices. So what would the last 8 gigabits be needed for? Short answer, color depth. 12 bits allows for over 68 billion colors to be displayed. To put that into perspective, that's 67 billion more than 10-bit. It really is a shame then that there's very little, if any, content created or displays that can actually process 12-bit. Just remember, HDMI 2.1 does not automatically equal 48 gigabits per second, and a huge amount of data is used by color depth and color space, not necessarily resolution or frame rate. Even with 24 gigabits per second, you can enjoy a competitive gaming or an amazing movie setup. Always check the specification of any HDMI 2.1 device to find out which features are supported. Thanks for watching, and we hope this has helped your understanding of what is an amazing yet complicated step forward for HDMI.